What's going on? I asked, my voice shaky. Stay close and don't move, he said, his voice cutting through the thick tension like a blade. Before I could argue, a figure stepped out from the shadows. They were tall and cloaked in black, their face obscured by darkness. The golden glow around Ethan flared again, brighter than before. Ethan, the figure said, their voice cold and hollow. You're not supposed to be here. Neither are you, Ethan said, his voice calm but carrying a sharp edge that made my breath hitch. My heart raced as I clung to Ethan's arm. Who is that? I whispered. They're not your concern, Ethan said, his gaze never leaving the figure. Just stay close. The figure laughed, the sound echoing unnaturally. You're breaking the rules, Guardian. You know what happens to angels who meddle? Try me, Ethan growled, stepping forward. I had no idea how much my life was about to change in that moment. The storm was just the beginning. The rain, cold and unrelenting, dripped from my hair as I stood there, frozen, waiting. Waiting for what? I didn't know yet, but I was about to find out. Everything I thought I knew, everything I'd ever trusted, was about to break away, piece by piece. The rain felt like it had a personal vendetta against me, cold and relentless, like it was daring me to shatter like I wasn't already. My umbrella? Broken, just like everything else in my life. I tightened my grip on my jacket, not that it helped much. The cold had already seeped in, chilling me from the inside out. What's the point? I thought bitterly, watching the puddles ripple with every raindrop as the bitterness in my mind felt sharper than the cold. Cheating boyfriend? Check. Family that thinks I'm a failure? Double check. A life I didn't ask for? Triple check. The funny part? This wasn't even rock bottom. That happened last week, when my ex, Mr. Perfect, decided to humiliate me in front of everyone we knew. He didn't just break my heart, he shattered it, stomped on it, and walked away without looking back. I stopped walking, my shoes splashing into a puddle. The water soaked through instantly. Great, just another thing to add to the list. I looked up at the sky, raindrops hitting my face like tiny needles. What did I ever do to deserve this? My voice cracked, barely audible over the rain. Nothing, that's the answer. I did nothing, and that's the problem. I kept walking, my head low. The world felt too big, too loud, and I just wanted to disappear. That's when I saw it. A park tucked between two towering buildings, hidden, like it was waiting for someone desperate enough to find it. Something about it drew me in. Maybe it was the eerie glow of the street lamp at its entrance, or the way the rain seemed to fall softer as I got closer. I hesitated, my soaked sneakers squelching on the pavement. I don't know why I walked into that park. Maybe it was the quiet, or maybe I was just too tired to care anymore. The world had been so cruel, and for once I wanted to be somewhere that felt still. The gravel crunched beneath my sneakers as I stepped through the gates. The rain softened to a mist, like even the storm couldn't bother to chase me here. Tall trees lined the path, their branches tangled like they were whispering secrets to each other. Then I saw it. Or him. At first, I thought it was the light playing tricks on me, a figure standing by the fountain at the center of the park. He was backlit by a soft golden glow, like the world had carved out a tiny piece of heaven just for him. He looked like something from another world, sharp features softened by an inexplicable sadness. I felt like I knew him, like he belonged to me. His hair was a mess of dark waves and his clothes were simple, a white shirt and black pants that somehow looked like they belonged in another era. Lost, are you? His voice cut through the silence, calm and warm like honey on a freezing day. I froze. He was looking right at me. Excuse me, I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. He tilted his head like he could see right through me. You don't belong here. Not in this life. Okay, creepy and cryptic. Great combo, but there was something about him that didn't feel threatening. If anything, it felt like he understood. Thanks for the pep talk, Mr. Mysterious, I muttered, half turning to leave. Wait, his voice stopped me in my tracks. You're not alone, you know, even when it feels like you are. I turned back to him, my heart thudding. Who are you? He smiled, and for a moment, the world didn't feel so heavy. Ethan. I don't know why I stayed. Maybe it was the way he said my name before I even told him. Or maybe it was the calm in his voice, the kind I hadn't felt in years. We ended up sitting by the fountain. The water shimmered, reflecting the golden glow that seemed to follow him. What are you doing out here? He asked, his gaze fixed on the rippling water. I let out a bitter laugh, trying to figure out where I went wrong. Ethan didn't respond right away. Instead, he reached into the water and pulled out a single drop. Just one. It hovered above his palm, glowing softly before it disappeared into the air. I blinked. How did you? Doesn't matter. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. What matters is that you're still here. Barely. His gaze snapped to mine, sharp and intense. That's enough. He looked angry for no reason. After we part away, I don't even know if we would ever meet. So what's the fuss? But I felt my throat tighten, tears threatening to spill. For the first time, someone wasn't telling me to get over it or toughen up. He just saw me. Lily, he said softly, your life isn't meant to be easy. It's meant to be yours. Every scar, every tear, it's all part of the story you're still writing. I didn't know what to say. For the first time in weeks, maybe even years, I didn't feel invisible. The air around us felt different, alive almost. The fountain's shimmering water reflected the faint golden glow that seemed to pulse from Ethan, like he carried a piece of the sun within him. I'm nobody special, I said quietly, my voice barely louder than the soft sound of the fountain. My eyes stayed fixed on the rippling water, as if it could somehow hold the answer to the mess that was my life. You're wrong, Ethan said firmly. His voice was soft but carried a weight, like it wasn't just an opinion, it was a fact. You're more special than you realize, Lily. I frowned, glancing at him. Okay, are you like some kind of therapist or something? Because this whole know me better than I know myself thing is a little weird. Ethan chuckled softly, the sound warm and oddly comforting. Not a therapist. More like a guide. A guide, I repeated skeptically, crossing my arms. A guide to what exactly? Cryptic life lessons and glowing water tricks. Instead of answering, Ethan raised his hand. The golden light around him pulsed brighter for a moment, and the street lamp above us flickered like it couldn't handle the intensity. For just a second, I swore the raindrops froze in midair, suspended like tiny diamonds in the dim glow. What are you doing? My voice cracked as I instinctively stepped back, my heart racing. Don't be afraid, he said gently, lowering his hand. His expression softened, and for a moment, the light around him dimmed, almost like he was trying to make himself seem less otherworldly. You've seen worse things in life, haven't you? I stopped in my tracks. He wasn't wrong, but how could he know that? My voice wavered as I asked, what are you? Ethan sighed, his golden eyes flickering with something that looked a lot like regret. Let's just say, my purpose is to keep you safe. My chest tightened. Protect me from what? His gaze turned distant, as if he were looking at something far beyond the park. When the time is right, you'll know everything. Until then, trust me. That's all I ask. Yet, I pressed, frustration bubbling up. So you're just going to leave me guessing? You want me to trust you, but you won't even tell me what's going on. Ethan hesitated, his jaw tightening. I'm not trying to keep you in the dark. I just can't tell you everything right now. Some things you're not ready to hear. The golden glow around him dimmed further, and just like that, he looked almost human again. Almost, but the weight of his words lingered, leaving me with more questions than answers. The air shifted, subtle at first, just a cool breeze that raised the hairs on my arms. But then it thickened, pressing down like an invisible weight. Ethan's posture stiffened. He stood, his eyes scanning the park like he was expecting someone or something. What's going on? I asked, my voice shaky. Stay behind me, he said, his tone sharper now. Before I could argue, a figure stepped out from the shadows. Tall, cloaked in black, and utterly featureless. The figure's face was hidden, swallowed by shadows that seemed to writhe and twist around it. The golden glow around Ethan flared again, brighter than before. Ethan, the figure said, their voice cold and hollow. You're not supposed to be here. Neither are you, Ethan shot back, his voice steady. My heart raced as I clung to Ethan's arm. Who is that? I whispered. They're not your concern, Ethan said, his gaze never leaving the figure. Just stay close. The figure laughed, the sound echoing unnaturally. You're breaking the rules, Guardian. You know what happens to angels who meddle? Try me, Ethan growled, stepping forward. The tension between them crackled, sharp and electric. The air felt alive with danger, and I was too terrified to even breathe. The figure didn't move, but the tension crackled like lightning. Then, just as suddenly as they appeared, the shadow vanished. Ethan let out a slow breath, his shoulders relaxing. What was that? I demanded, my voice trembling. He turned to me, his expression unreadable. Just something you shouldn't have to deal with, Ethan muttered, his gaze distant as though seeing something only he could. I glared at him, frustration bubbling up. Stop being so cryptic. If you're here to protect me, I have a right to know from what. Ethan hesitated, his jaw tightening. You'll know when the time comes. For now, just trust me. The walk back was quiet, too quiet. I could hear my own breathing, uneven and shaky. You're mad, broke the silence, his tone calm but cautious. I stopped in my tracks, spinning around to face him. Mad? No, Ethan. I'm terrified. What the hell just happened back there? Who was that? And why do you glow like some kind of human firefly? He flinched, his golden eyes flickering with something unreadable. Guilt? Sadness? It didn't matter. I wasn't letting him off the hook this time. You want me to trust you, I continued, my voice rising, but you keep hiding things from me. How can I trust someone who can't even tell me the truth? Ethan ran a hand through his hair, his jaw tightening. It's not that simple, Lily. Then make it simple. I yelled, my frustration boiling over. You show up out of nowhere, act all mysterious and protective, and now I'm being stalked by creepy shadow people? What am I supposed to do with that? He stepped closer, his expression softening. I'm trying to protect you. That's all I've ever wanted to do. Why? I demanded. Why Why me? What makes me so special? How am I supposed to just go along with this? I snapped, frustration boiling over. I don't even know what I'm up against. Ethan hesitated, his gaze dropping to the ground. Because you're important. More than you know. I stared at him, my chest tightening. His words felt sincere, but they only left me with more questions. That's not an answer, Ethan. I know, he said quietly, his shoulders sagging. But it's all I can give you right now. Are you just going to stand out here all night? I asked, leaning against the doorframe. Ethan gave me a small, hesitant smile. I don't need sleep, remember? Well, I do. And I'd rather not have you glowing outside my window like some kind of supernatural flashlight. He laughed softly, the sound warming me despite myself. Fair point. Come in, I said, stepping aside. But only because I'm too tired to argue anymore. Ethan followed me in, his presence somehow filling the tiny space. It was the first time I'd had anyone over in, well, ever. Nice place, he said, glancing around. Don't lie, I muttered, collapsing onto the couch. It's a dump. He didn't argue, just sat down across from me, his golden eyes studying me intently. You're different, he said suddenly. I blinked. Thanks, I guess. No, I mean, most people would have broken by now. After everything you've been through. His voice was soft, almost reverent. But you're still standing. Something in his tone made my throat tighten. I looked away, fiddling with a loose thread on the couch. Yeah, well, sometimes I wish I wasn't. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with unspoken words. When I finally looked up, Ethan's expression was raw, unguarded. Don't say that, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Don't ever say that. Before I could respond, the room went cold, unnaturally cold. The lights flickered, and that suffocating feeling from the park returned. Stay behind me, Ethan said sharply, rising to his feet. The window shattered before I could move, and a dark figure materialized in the room, its eyes glowing like embers. Give her up, Guardian, the figure hissed, its voice dripping with malice. Ethan stepped in front of me, his glow intensifying until it was almost blinding. Over my dead body, the figure lunged and the room erupted into chaos. Ethan moved faster than I could follow, his every movement precise and lethal. Lily, run, he yelled, his voice cutting through the noise. But I couldn't move. I was frozen, my heart pounding as I watched the fight unfold. Ethan was incredible, his every strike glowing with golden light, but the figure was relentless, its dark energy crackling like lightning. Finally, with a blinding burst of light, Ethan drove the figure back. It shrieked, dissolving into shadows before disappearing completely. The room was silent again, except for the sound of my ragged breathing. Ethan turned to me, his glow dimmer now, his expression weary. Are you okay? I nodded, too stunned to speak. He took a step closer, his gaze softening. I'm sorry you had to see that. What was that thing? I whispered, my voice trembling. Something that shouldn't exist in your world, he said, his tone heavy with regret. And it won't stop until it gets to you. The morning started like it always did. Claire perched on her throne at the kitchen island, sipping her overpriced almond milk latte like she was a queen. Oh, look, she sneered as I walked in, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her mug. It's little Miss Charity Case. Don't you have some pity party to attend? I ignored her, heading straight for the fridge. Ethan's voice, soft and steady, echoed in my ear. Don't let her get to you. I jumped, nearly dropping the carton of milk. Would you stop doing that? I hissed under my breath. Doing what? Claire said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Talking to yourself again? Maybe we should get you checked out, Lily. Ethan leaned casually against the counter, completely invisible to her. Want me to trip her? Or maybe spill her latte on that designer blouse? Despite myself, I almost laughed. No, I whispered, shaking my head. Don't. Oh my God, are you seriously talking to yourself? Claire cut in, her smirk widening. You're even crazier than I thought. I clenched my fists, trying to block her out. But then Ethan's hand brushed against my shoulder, a comforting warmth spreading through me. You don't have to take this, he murmured, his golden eyes locking onto mine. Suddenly, Claire's chair wobbled. She let out a startled yelp as her latte tipped over, spilling all over her pristine white blouse. What the hell? She shrieked, jumping up. I couldn't hold back the grin that spread across my face. Ethan smirked beside me, clearly pleased with himself. Lily, Claire snapped, glaring at me. Did you do this? I held up my hands innocently. I didn't even touch you. You, she stopped, her eyes narrowing. Whatever. You're still a freak. As she stormed off to change, Ethan leaned in, his voice low. You're welcome. I rolled my eyes but couldn't suppress the warmth spreading through my chest. You're impossible, you know that?